My brother didn't invite me to his wedding. Then the lawyer said my name. Part 1. The invitation that never came. There are moments in life that break your heart. And then there are moments so quiet, so ordinary, that you don't even realize your life has changed until days later. For me, it started with a wedding invitation. Or rather, the invitation that never arrived. My name is Ethan. I'm 32 years old. I have one younger brother, Liam. Growing up, we were inseparable. If someone saw one of us, the other wasn't far behind. We shared a bedroom. We played baseball together. We got into trouble together. When I broke my arm climbing an old oak tree, Liam jumped out after me because he didn't want me to be alone in the ambulance. That's the kind of brother he was. Or, at least, that's the brother I thought I had. Life changed after college. I moved 3 hours away, started my own construction company, worked every weekend, every holiday, every birthday, not because I wanted to, because I had no choice. Starting a business from nothing doesn't leave much room for family dinners. Liam stayed in our hometown. He became a teacher, married his high school sweetheart, bought a little house 5 minutes from our parents. Everyone joked that he was the good son. I didn't mind. He deserved it. We still talked. Not every day. Maybe once every couple of weeks. Mostly short phone calls. How's work? Busy. How's mom? Still making too much food. Nothing unusual. Nothing that made me think something was wrong. Then one afternoon, my mother called. She sounded excited. Ethan, I've got wonderful news. What happened? Liam finally picked a wedding date. I smiled. That's amazing. When is it? There was a pause. Next Saturday. I frowned. Next Saturday? Yeah. I haven't received anything. Oh. I'm sure it's just the mail. I laughed. It'll probably show up tomorrow. It never did. 3 days later, my cousin posted something online. A photo of a tuxedo. Caption: 1 week until Liam's big day. I looked through the comments. Everyone was talking about seating arrangements, travel plans, bachelor party stories, people from high school, old neighbors, even relatives from another state. Everyone seemed to know about the wedding. Everyone. Except me. I called Liam. Straight to voicemail. No problem. He was probably working. I texted him. Hey, mom said the wedding's next week. My invitation must have gotten lost, face with tears of joy. No reply. Hours passed. Then a full day. Nothing. That wasn't like him. I called our mother again. Did Liam mention me? She hesitated. He's just busy. Mom. Another pause. Then she quietly asked, can you come over tonight? The way she said it made my stomach tighten. 3 hours later, I was sitting at my parents' kitchen table. The same table where we'd celebrated birthdays, Christmas, graduations, and every Thanksgiving I could remember. Dad wasn't speaking. Mom couldn't stop twisting her wedding ring around her finger. I looked from one to the other. What is going on? Nobody answered. Finally, Dad stood up, walked to the window, without turning around. He quietly said, Liam doesn't want you at the wedding. I laughed. Actually laughed. Good one. Nobody smiled. I looked at Mom. She was crying. Real tears. My heart started pounding. What do you mean? He doesn't want me there? Dad still refused to face me. He asked us not to tell you. The room suddenly felt smaller, hotter, harder to breathe. Why? Silence. I asked again. Why? Mom whispered. He thinks you betrayed him. I stared at her. Betrayed him? What are you talking about? I haven't even seen him in 2 months. Mom covered her face. We don't know everything. But he said he never wants to see you again. My phone buzzed. A message from Liam. Finally, I opened it immediately. Only 6 words. Please don't come to the wedding. Nothing else. No explanation. No argument. No goodbye. Just 6 words. I read the message over and over, looking for something hidden. Some clue, some joke, some sign that my little brother hadn't just erased me from the biggest day of his life. There was nothing. Dad finally turned toward me. He looked older than I'd ever seen him. I tried to change his mind. He wouldn't listen. I looked at both of them. Did either of you ask him why? Neither answered. That silence told me everything. They knew. They just weren't telling me. I stood up, picked up my keys. I'm going to ask him myself. Mom grabbed my wrist. No. Why? Her voice shook. Because if you go there now, you'll destroy what's left of this family. I gently pulled my hand away, then asked the question that would haunt me for the rest of my life. What family? I walked out the front door, got into my truck, started the engine. Then, my phone buzzed again. Another message. This one. From a number I didn't recognize. There was no greeting, no name, just one sentence. If you want to know why your brother hates you, don't go to the wedding. Go to Grandpa's old house instead. I stared at the screen. My grandfather had been dead for almost 12 years. His house had been empty ever since. No one had lived there. No one had even talked about it. So why would a stranger send me there? The week of my brother's wedding? Part 2. Grandpa's house. I read the message 5 times. Then a 6th. Then I checked the number. Unknown. No profile picture. No name. Just those 14 words. If you want to know why your brother hates you, don't go to the wedding. Go to Grandpa's old house instead. I almost deleted it. It sounded ridiculous, like one of those anonymous internet pranks. But something about it bothered me. Not because of the message. Because of Grandpa's house. Almost nobody remembered it anymore. Grandpa died 12 years earlier. Heart failure. Peacefully, according to the doctors. The funeral had been simple. Family only. After that, the old farmhouse slowly disappeared from everyone's conversations. The grass grew taller every year. The porch collapsed. The windows became covered with dust. Eventually, people simply called it the old place. No one visited. Not even Dad. Especially not Dad. I remembered asking him once, maybe 4 years after Grandpa died, why don't we sell the farm? Dad answered without looking at me. Some things aren't ready to be sold. At the time, I thought he meant memories. Now, I wasn't so sure. Instead of driving toward Liam's house, I turned left, toward the countryside. The farther I drove, the quieter everything became. The city disappeared. Traffic disappeared. Even my phone signal faded. Only old roads, cornfields, an empty sky remained. The farmhouse appeared exactly as I remembered. Small, white, weathered by time. The wooden fence leaned sideways. One shutter hung loose from a broken hinge. Nature had begun reclaiming everything. I parked beside the barn. For several seconds, I simply sat there, listening. Nothing, not even birds. I walked onto the porch. The old boards groaned beneath my boots. The front door was locked. Of course it was. I looked through the dusty window. Furniture still sat exactly where Grandpa left it. His rocking chair, the old fireplace, even the clock above the mantel, frozen forever at 4:17. You're late. The voice came from behind me. I spun around. An elderly man stood beside the barn. Maybe 70. Baseball cap, flannel shirt, walking stick. He smiled politely. I've been wondering when you'd finally come. I know you, he chuckled. No. But I knew your grandfather. He slowly walked closer. My name's Walter. I owned the farm next door. He looked toward Grandpa's house. Robert always said one of his grandsons would come back someday. Robert. I'd never heard anyone call Grandpa by his first name. I got a strange message, I admitted. Walter nodded. I know. You know? I sent it. I stared at him. You? He pulled an old flip phone from his pocket. I figured that'd get your attention. What is this about? Walter looked at the house. Not out here. He reached into his jacket, pulled out a rusted key. The back door still works. Inside. The farmhouse smelled exactly like my childhood. Old wood, dust, coffee. Even though nobody had lived there in years, it felt alive. Walter walked confidently through the hallway, as if he'd done it hundreds of times. He stopped in Grandpa's study. Everything was untouched. Books lined every shelf. An old desk faced the window. Family photographs covered the walls. Then Walter surprised me. He pulled one of the books. A quiet click echoed inside the room. A section of the bookshelf slowly shifted. My eyes widened. Behind it was a narrow storage room. What is this? Walter smiled. Your grandfather liked secrets. The hidden room was small, only large enough for a filing cabinet, a wooden chest, and several cardboard boxes. No treasure, no gold, just papers, thousands of papers. Walter opened the filing cabinet. Every drawer was labeled. Taxes, land, insurance, family. Family? I frowned. He pulled out the last drawer. Instead of folders, there were cassette tapes, dozens of them, each labeled with a date. Some were older than I was. Grandpa recorded everything. Walter said quietly, arguments, meetings, conversations. He always believed memories fade, but recordings don't. I picked up one tape. The date caught my attention. June 14th. Exactly 1 week before Grandpa died. Walter noticed. That's the one. The one. The last conversation. Between your grandfather, your father, and Liam. My stomach tightened. Liam? He was only 19. Why would he be here? Walter looked uncomfortable. Because your grandfather was dying. He wanted to tell both of you something. I frowned. Both of us? Walter nodded slowly. You were supposed to be there too. The room suddenly felt colder. I never got invited. I know. What? I said. I know. I stared at him. Who decided not to tell me? Walter didn't answer immediately. Instead, he handed me the cassette, then quietly said, listen first. Ask questions later. There was still an old cassette player sitting on Grandpa's desk. I inserted the tape, pressed play, static. Then Grandpa's voice, weak, older. Ethan should be here. My father's voice answered. He couldn't make it. Grandpa sounded annoyed. Did you ask him? Silence. Then Dad quietly said, no. Every muscle in my body tensed. Grandpa spoke again. You had no right. I know. No. You don't. He deserved to hear this himself. Another voice entered the recording. Liam, young, confused. Dad. What's going on? Grandpa sighed, then spoke the sentence that changed everything. There's something both of my grandsons should know before I die. The tape suddenly crackled. The audio distorted. Then stopped. The rest of the recording had been ripped out, physically cut from the cassette. I stared at the player. Someone had deliberately removed the ending. I slowly looked at Walter. Who cut it? He closed his eyes. I don't know. But I know. Who took the original? My voice barely came out. Who? Walter looked directly into my eyes, then quietly answered. Your father. Couldn't believe it. Dad had lied. Again. Not just to me. To Grandpa. To Liam. To everyone. I stood up so quickly the chair fell over. I'm going home. Walter shook his head. No. Why? Because there's one more thing. He walked toward the old wooden chest, unlocked it, lifted the lid. Inside were dozens of unopened envelopes, every single one addressed to me. Birthdays, Christmas, graduations, years and years of letters. None of them had ever reached me. I picked one up. The handwriting wasn't Grandpa's. It wasn't Dad's either. It belonged to Liam, my little brother. the brother who now refused to invite me to his wedding. My hands shook as I turned the envelope over. The date on the corner read, 10 years ago, the same week. I left home. Part 3, the letters my brother wrote. For almost a full minute, I couldn't move. The envelope felt impossibly heavy in my hands. 10 years old. My name written across the front in Liam's messy handwriting. The same handwriting I remembered from birthday cards, Christmas presents, and little notes he used to leave on my bedroom door. Only this one I had never seen before. Walter quietly stepped outside. He didn't say a word. He simply closed the study door behind him, leaving me alone with 10 years of unanswered questions. I carefully opened the envelope. The paper inside had yellowed with age. The fold marks were worn from being opened and closed. More than once, someone had read this letter. Many times, just not me. Hey, Ethan. Dad says you're really busy. Mom says starting a business is hard. I wanted to come see you this weekend, but Dad said I should give you space. I know things are weird after Grandpa got sick. I just wanted you to know. I miss you. The house feels empty without you. Please call me when you can. Love. Your annoying little brother. I lowered the paper. My chest felt tight. I remembered that week perfectly. I'd waited for Liam to call. When he never did, I convinced myself he didn't care anymore. The entire time. He thought I was ignoring him. I reached for another envelope. This one was dated 6 months later. Hey. I don't know if you're mad at me. Dad says you're too busy to answer. I don't believe him. I know you. You always answer. If I did something wrong, please tell me. Another. Every letter sounded a little different. Hope, confusion, worry, then sadness. 1 year later. Maybe you really don't want me anymore. I don't understand why. I wish Grandpa were still here. He'd make us talk. 2 years later. Happy birthday. I still buy you a present every year. I know that's stupid. Mom says I should stop. I can't. 3 years. 4, 5. Every birthday. Every Christmas. Every major moment of our lives. Liam had written. Every single time. Not one letter had reached me. My eyes filled with tears. Not because he wrote them, because he never stopped. While I believed he'd forgotten me, he'd been trying to reach me. Then, everything changed. I picked up an envelope dated exactly 2 years ago. Unlike the others, it had already been opened. Several pages were missing. Only the last sheet remained. If what Dad told me is true, I don't know who you are anymore. I spent my whole life defending you. Now I don't even recognize you. Please, don't contact me again. I read it twice, 3 times. Something was wrong. This wasn't Liam. The handwriting was his, but the words, they didn't fit. The earlier letters were warm, honest. This one sounded cold, almost rehearsed. And why were the first pages missing? I looked toward the door. Walter. He returned a few seconds later. What happened? I showed him the letter. It's incomplete. He frowned immediately. It wasn't when I last saw it. What? There were 3 pages. Not one. A chill ran through my body. Someone had removed the beginning. Recently, Walter walked over to the filing cabinet. He checked every drawer. Nothing. Then he froze. The box. What box? He pointed toward the wooden chest. It wasn't open this morning. We both looked down. Fresh scratches surrounded the lock. Very small. Almost invisible. But definitely new. Someone had opened it. After Walter checked the house. Before I arrived. Someone was here. I whispered. Walter nodded. And they knew exactly what they were looking for. Just then, I heard tires outside. A car door slammed. Walter slowly walked to the window. His face immediately changed. What is it? He didn't answer. He simply stepped aside. I looked through the dusty glass. A black SUV had stopped beside the barn. 3 people stepped out. One of them was my father. The second was my mother. The third was Liam. For 10 years, I'd imagined this moment. I thought I'd be angry. I thought I'd scream. Instead, I felt nothing. Just confusion. Liam looked older. His suit jacket was draped over one shoulder. He hadn't shaved in days. He looked exhausted. Nothing like a man getting married in 48 hours. Dad knocked once. Hard. Ethan. No answer. Another knock. We know you're inside. Walter looked at me. You don't have to open it. Before I could answer, Liam spoke. His voice cracked. Ethan. Please. I just want the truth. Those words stopped me. The truth? He was asking me for the truth. I opened the front door. No one moved. For several seconds. The 4 of us simply stared at each other. Then Liam reached into his jacket, pulled out a thick manila envelope. He held it tightly. His hands were shaking. I found this yesterday, he whispered. Dad hid it. He slowly handed it to me. On the front, written in my grandfather's handwriting, were 6 words. Open this only if I die. I looked at Dad. His face had turned completely white. He didn't look angry. He looked terrified. Not terrified of me, terrified of what was inside that envelope. Part 4. The envelope my father spent 12 years hiding. Nobody reached for the envelope. Not me. Not Liam. Not even my father. It sat between us. Like it already knew it was about to destroy whatever remained of our family. The old farmhouse had never felt so small. Outside, the wind pushed against the broken shutters. Inside, the silence was almost unbearable. Dad was the first to speak. Ethan. His voice sounded different. Not angry. Not commanding. Tired. Please. Don't open it. I looked at him. For 12 years. You kept something from me. And now you're asking me to trust you? He lowered his head. I'm asking you to let me explain first. Liam laughed. It wasn't a happy laugh. It was the sound someone makes when they've run out of patience. You've been saying that my entire life. Dad looked at him. Liam. No. My brother interrupted. Today. You're finally going to listen. He turned toward me. I found that envelope yesterday. Where? In Dad's workshop. He'd hidden it inside an old toolbox. I almost threw it away. Dad closed his eyes. Like hearing those words physically hurt him. Walter quietly locked the front door, then pulled every curtain shut. I frowned. What are you doing? He looked toward the road. If this conversation is about to happen, it stays inside these walls. Nobody questioned him. I slowly broke the wax seal. The paper inside was thicker than normal. Old, carefully folded. The handwriting belonged to Grandpa. Steady, neat, exactly as I remembered. At the very top, he'd written one sentence. If you're reading this, then Robert failed. Robert, my father. I began reading aloud. My grandsons. If this letter has reached you, then your father ignored my final request. Dad quietly whispered. I'm sorry. Neither Liam nor I looked at him. I don't have much time. Doctors tell me my heart is failing. That doesn't scare me. Dying is easy. Leaving your family broken. That's what scares me. I looked up briefly. Dad was crying silently, not trying to hide it, just crying. I continued. 4 years. I've watched this family split into pieces. Not because anyone stopped loving each other, but because people became too proud to tell the truth. Then I reached the paragraph that changed everything. Ethan. If you're reading this, your brother never abandoned you. Liam. If you're reading this, your brother never forgot you. Everything that happened between you was allowed to happen. I stopped reading. The room was completely silent. Liam looked at Dad. What does that mean? Dad covered his face with both hands. He already knew. Grandpa's letter continued. Every letter either of you wrote passed through your father. Some he mailed. Many he burned. I felt my stomach drop. Burned? No, that couldn't be right. I looked at Dad. He didn't deny it. Liam's voice shook. You burned my letters? Dad whispered. Not all of them. I almost laughed. Not all of them? As if that somehow made it better. Grandpa wrote, Robert convinced himself that time would heal your relationship. Instead, every letter he destroyed became another brick in the wall between you. My hands began trembling. I remembered every birthday, wondering why Liam hadn't called, every Christmas, waiting for a message that never came. The entire time, my own father had been standing between us. Liam suddenly shouted, Why? His voice echoed through the farmhouse. Why would you do that? Dad looked at both of us. Then, for the first time, he finally answered. Because I was ashamed. We waited. There had to be more. There wasn't a day that I didn't expect one of you to ask about Grandpa. I knew if you ever sat down together, the truth would come out. What truth? I asked. He looked toward the floor. The truth about the farm. Walter quietly sighed. I wondered how long it'd take. Dad slowly sat down. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely hold the chair. The farm wasn't left to me. Neither Liam nor I spoke. He continued. It wasn't left to either of you. Now I was confused. Then who inherited it? Dad looked directly at me. You did. The room went silent. I blinked. What? When Grandpa died, he left the farm to you. I laughed in disbelief. That's impossible. I would have known. Dad slowly nodded. You would have. If I'd filed the will. Walter closed his eyes. So you finally admitted it. Dad nodded once. Liam looked completely stunned. You never filed Grandpa's will? Dad shook his head. No. Why? Because if I had, Ethan would have sold the farm. I stared at him. You decided that for me? I thought I was protecting Grandpa's wishes. No. Walter interrupted. You were protecting your own guilt. Dad didn't argue, because Walter was right. I looked back at Grandpa's letter. There was still one page left. The last page. At the bottom, Grandpa had written, If Robert finally tells you the truth, forgive him only if he earns it. Not because he's your father. Because family isn't built by blood. It's built by honesty. Then, there was one final sentence. One sentence, underlined twice. The real inheritance isn't this farm. It's hidden where your grandmother always said goodbye. All four of us looked at each other. Liam frowned. My grandmother always said goodbye. He stopped. Then his eyes widened. The train station. Walter nodded slowly. No, he whispered. The old oak tree. Dad suddenly stood up. His face had gone completely pale. No. Walter looked at him. You remember now, don't you? Dad whispered. Oh God. I buried it there. Neither Liam nor I understood. Buried what? Before anyone could ask another question. A car pulled into the driveway. Not one. 3. Black SUVs. All at once. Walter moved toward the window, then quietly said something that made every hair on my arms stand up. They're here before the lawyer. Part 5. The lawyer arrived. Nobody moved. The 3 black SUVs stopped in front of the farmhouse. Their engines idled for a few seconds. Then, every door opened. I expected police, private investigators, maybe people connected to my grandfather's estate. Instead, only one man stepped out. The other drivers remained inside their vehicles. The man wore a dark navy suit despite the summer heat. Gray hair, leather briefcase, perfect posture. He looked more like a judge than a lawyer. Walter smiled the moment he saw him. About time. The man adjusted his glasses. I got here as fast as I could. Then his eyes landed on my father. His expression changed instantly. So, you finally told them? Dad couldn't answer. The lawyer slowly climbed the porch. My name is Charles Whitmore. I represented your grandfather for 27 years. He looked directly at Liam and me. I've been waiting 12 years to meet both of you together. My father suddenly stepped forward. Charles. Please. The lawyer interrupted him immediately. No. I've listened to you for 12 years. Today. You listen. He entered the farmhouse without asking, placed his briefcase on Grandpa's old desk, unlocked it, pulled out a thick folder. Not one document, dozens. Every page carried official seals, signatures, court stamps. Everything looked painfully legal. He carefully spread them across the desk, then pointed at the very first page. This is your grandfather's real will. I leaned closer. The document was dated 2 weeks before Grandpa died. Everything looked ordinary, until I reached the final paragraph. I read it twice, then a third time, because I couldn't believe it. Grandpa hadn't left the farm to me. He hadn't left it to Liam. He hadn't left it to Dad. He'd left it to both of us, together, exactly 50% each. But there was one condition, a condition none of us expected. Charles quietly read it aloud. Neither grandson may sell, divide, or transfer ownership, unless both agree. If they cannot stand together, the entire estate shall be donated to St. Andrew Children's Foundation. Silence. Then Charles added quietly, that includes the farmland, the house, the investment accounts, the timber rights, the rental properties. I looked at him. There are rental properties? He nodded. 7. Liam blinked. Grandpa owned 7 rental properties? Charles looked surprised. You didn't know? We both slowly shook our heads. Charles sighed deeply. Your grandfather wasn't a wealthy farmer. He was one of the largest landowners in the county. I stared at the documents. There had to be some mistake. Growing up, Grandpa drove the same rusty pickup, wore the same boots for years, fixed his own fences. He never looked wealthy. Charles smiled sadly. He liked it that way. Then he turned another page. More documents, investment portfolios, land surveys, bank statements. By the time he finished, my head was spinning. The estate was worth just over $11 million. Nobody spoke. Not even my father. Finally, Liam broke the silence. So, my wedding. Charles looked at him. What about it? Liam swallowed. Dad told me Ethan sued Grandpa before he died. I froze. What? Charles frowned. What are you talking about? Liam turned toward me. He said you wanted Grandpa declared mentally unfit. He said you were trying to steal everything. I felt like someone had punched me in the chest. I never did that. I know that now, Liam whispered. But that's what Dad told me. I slowly looked at my father. He wasn't defending himself. He wasn't denying it. He simply closed his eyes. For the first time, I understood. My brother hadn't stopped loving me. He'd been protecting Grandpa from a version of me that never existed. Charles quietly removed another folder. This is why I came today. He placed it in front of Liam. Inside were copies of every legal notice he'd sent over the last 12 years. Every single one had been addressed to both of us. None had ever reached me. None had ever reached Liam. Every envelope had been returned. Signed by our father. Walter quietly whispered. I knew there was more. Dad looked completely defeated. I thought, if neither of them knew, the family would stay together. Charles almost laughed. Robert, you destroyed the relationship you were trying to protect. Nobody spoke for a long time. Then, Liam slowly stood up. He removed the gold wedding band from his finger, the one he'd been wearing since the rehearsal. He looked at me, then at Dad. then quietly said, "I'm calling off the wedding." Mom gasped. "Liam." He shook his head. "I can't stand in front of 200 people and promise honesty. When my own family has lived a lie for 12 years. The room fell silent again. Dad buried his face in his hands. For the first time, I didn't see the man who threw me out. I saw a broken father, a man who believed control could replace honesty, and who had lost both of his sons because of it. Charles closed the folder, then looked at both of us. "There is still one final document." He paused. "The one your grandfather believed mattered most." He slowly slid a sealed envelope across the table. On the front, written in Grandpa's unmistakable handwriting, were 6 simple words: "Open this together, or never open it." Part 6. Grandpa never cared about the farm. Nobody touched the envelope. Not me, not Liam, not even Charles. It rested on the table. Old, creased, its edges worn by time, for 12 years. It had waited for this exact moment. Charles looked at us. "Your grandfather gave me one instruction." He placed both hands on the table. He said, "Don't let either of them read this alone." Liam slowly sat beside me. Felt strange. For the first time in over a decade. My little brother wasn't sitting across from me. He was sitting next to me, exactly where he used to sit when we were kids, back when we'd split pancakes on Sunday mornings and argue over who got the last piece of bacon. Funny how memories come back. Not when life is easy, but when it's falling apart. I carefully opened the envelope. Inside, there was only one handwritten page. No legal language, no numbers, no bank accounts, just Grandpa's handwriting. "Ethan, Liam, if you're reading this together, then I already got what I wanted." I stopped, looked at Liam. He looked just as confused. I kept reading. "You probably think this letter is about the farm. It isn't. You probably think it's about money. It never was. Money makes strangers fight. Pride makes brothers stop speaking. I was never afraid of losing my land. I was afraid of losing my family." The room became completely silent. Even Charles looked emotional. Grandpa continued, "Robert, if you're standing in that room, then I failed you too." Dad slowly lifted his head. Tears streamed down his face. "Son, you spent your whole life trying to control pain. You believed if you controlled every conversation, every decision, every relationship, you could stop this family from breaking. But families don't break because of truth. They break because truth is delayed." Dad closed his eyes. His shoulders began shaking. I had never seen him cry. Not at Grandpa's funeral. Not when Grandma died. Not even when Mom was diagnosed with cancer years earlier. But now, he couldn't stop. Grandpa's letter continued. "Ethan, Liam, when you were children, I watched you build treehouses together, fight together, protect each other. Neither of you ever cared who owned the toys. You only cared whether your brother came outside to play." Liam quietly laughed through his tears. "I remember that treehouse." "So do I answered. "Somewhere along the way, adults convinced themselves that protecting each other meant hiding things. It doesn't. Love without honesty becomes control. Control eventually becomes loneliness." I slowly lowered the letter. Nobody spoke, because nobody needed to. Grandpa had somehow described our entire family in 4 sentences. Then came the last paragraph. "If both of you are sitting together, I have one final request. Don't sell the farm. Don't keep it either. Turn it into something that gives other families a second chance. Some children lose their homes through no fault of their own. Make sure they find one here." I looked at Liam. He looked back at me. Neither of us cared about the $11 million anymore. The money suddenly felt small. Liam quietly folded the letter. "I don't want the farm." I nodded. "Neither do I." Charles smiled for the first time. I had a feeling you'd say that. Dad suddenly stood. His legs were trembling. I destroyed everything. Nobody answered. He looked at both of us. I thought, if I made enough decisions, I keep everyone together. Instead, I lost both my sons. For a long time, none of us moved. Then something happened that I never thought I'd see. Dad slowly walked toward me, stopped just out of arm's reach. Not because I told him to, because he didn't believe he deserved to come any closer. He whispered, I don't want forgiveness. I just wanted one chance to finally tell you that I was proud of you. 10 years. That sentence had taken him 10 years. I looked at him, then quietly answered, I needed to hear that. When I was 18, he nodded. I know. That was all. No excuses. No explanations. Just, I know. Liam quietly stood up. He looked at both of us, then said something that completely changed the room. I'm not canceling my wedding. Everyone looked at him. I'm postponing it. He smiled through tears. Because I'm not getting married. Until my brother is standing beside me. For the first time in 12 years. He hugged me. Not a quick hug. Not an awkward one. The kind brothers give each other. When they both realize they've been mourning someone who was never actually gone. Dad watched us. He didn't interrupt. He didn't ask for anything. He simply sat back down and cried, alone. Not because we rejected him, because he finally understood what 12 years of silence had cost. Part 7. The wedding we almost lost. 3 months passed. Not because everything was suddenly okay. Because healing doesn't happen in a single conversation. It happens in small moments. Awkward phone calls, short visits, long silences, and tiny decisions to try again. Liam postponed the wedding indefinitely. Not because Emma was angry. Quite the opposite. She was the one who convinced him to wait. I met her for coffee 2 weeks after the farmhouse. She smiled warmly and said, You know what he cried about? I shook my head. He wasn't crying because the wedding changed. He was crying because he thought he'd lost his brother forever. That sentence stayed with me. 4 years. I believed Liam had chosen everyone else over me. The truth was, he'd been grieving a brother he thought no longer existed, just as I had. Dad called once every Sunday. At first, I never answered. Then one day, I did. Neither of us knew what to say, so we talked about baseball, weather, his tomato garden, anything except the last 12 years. Oddly enough, that was enough. Healing rarely begins with apologies. Sometimes, it begins with ordinary conversations. Mom was different. She never asked for forgiveness. She never said, everything happens for a reason. She never tried to defend Dad. Instead, every Wednesday, she baked something. Cookies, apple pie, banana bread. She'd leave it with the receptionist at my office. Then she'd leave before I came downstairs. No note, no pressure. Just banana bread. After the 6th week, I finally caught her in the parking lot. You don't have to keep doing this. She smiled. I know. Then why? She looked toward the sky. Because baking for my boys was always how I said, I love you. I couldn't answer. One afternoon, Liam invited me to see the wedding venue. The same place I'd never been invited to. A small vineyard overlooking a lake. Beautiful. Quiet. He stood beside the ceremony arch for a long time, then laughed. You know what's embarrassing? What? I spent 6 months arguing with Emma about who my best man should be. I smiled. I guess you figured it out. He looked at me. I had already picked you. What? The day I got engaged. My smile disappeared. I ordered your suit. You did. He nodded. It's still hanging in my closet. I never canceled it. Neither of us spoke for a while. Then he quietly added, I just convinced myself I'd never get to see you wear it. 2 weeks before the new wedding date, Dad asked if we could meet. Just the two of us. No mom. No Liam. No lawyers. No farmhouse. Just coffee. He looked healthier, still older than I remembered, but lighter, like telling the truth had removed a weight he'd carried for years. He slid a small cardboard box across the table. I found these. Inside were ashes, burned paper, pieces of old envelopes. I looked at him. What is this? The letters, he whispered. The ones I couldn't save. He looked ashamed. I burned most of them, but I couldn't burn all of them. He reached into the box, carefully unfolded a small piece of paper. Only 3 words remained readable. Love you, Ethan. Nothing else survived. I stared at the blackened edges. He quietly said, I destroyed years of your lives. I can never fix that. No. I answered honestly. You can't. He nodded. I know. Then he surprised me. I'm selling the house. I frowned. Our house. He nodded. Your mother and I don't need it anymore. What are you going to do? He smiled sadly. We're buying a little place near the lake. Smaller. Simpler. I've spent too many years living in a house. That reminds me of who I used to be. The wedding day finally arrived. This time. An invitation did arrive. Hand-delivered. Not by the mail. By Liam himself. He knocked on my apartment door, held out the envelope, then smiled. I wasn't risking the postal service this time. We both laughed. The invitation was simple, elegant. No gold lettering. No fancy design. Just one handwritten sentence beneath my name. I've been saving your seat for 12 years. I had to sit down before I could finish reading. The morning of the wedding. I stood in front of the mirror wearing the tuxedo Liam had bought months earlier. Fit perfectly. Almost as if he'd always believed I'd wear it. Even when I didn't. At the venue. Guests slowly filled the chairs. People whispered when they saw me. Not because I was rich. Not because of the family drama. Because everyone had expected me to disappear from Liam's life forever. Instead, I was standing beside him, exactly where a brother belongs. Just before the ceremony, Liam looked at me, nervous. I laughed. I'm not the one getting married. He smiled. No. But you're the reason I can. Then he hugged me. Quick one this time. The kind brothers exchange without needing words. Across the vineyard, Dad watched us, his eyes filled with tears. Mom quietly squeezed his hand. Neither of them interrupted. Neither tried to make the moment about themselves. For the first time in years, they simply let their sons have each other back. As the music began, Emma started walking down the aisle. Liam whispered one sentence before taking his place. I'm finally getting married. With my whole family here. Part 8. Some families aren't saved. They're rebuilt. The ceremony was beautiful. Not because everything was perfect. Because it wasn't. There were scars. Broken memories. Years we could never get back. But for the first time in a very long time, we weren't pretending those scars didn't exist. We were simply choosing to move forward anyway. As Liam and Emma stood beneath the white arch overlooking the lake, the officiant smiled. I've performed hundreds of weddings. He looked at them. But today, I don't think we're only celebrating a marriage. He paused. I think we're witnessing a family finding its way back. The guests smiled. Only a few people understood what he truly meant. We did. When it came time for the vows, Liam looked at Emma first. His voice was steady. I promise to always tell you the truth. Even when it's uncomfortable. He smiled. Because I've learned that silence can destroy people faster than honesty ever will. I saw Dad lower his head. He understood every word. Then Emma looked toward me before speaking. I want to thank someone. She turned fully. Ethan. If you had chosen revenge, none of us would be standing here today. I was caught completely off guard. She smiled. You reminded Liam that forgiveness isn't forgetting. It's deciding that pain doesn't get to choose your future. I didn't know what to say. so I simply nodded. The ceremony ended with applause, laughter, music, for the first time in years. It felt natural, not forced, not polite, real. During the reception, Liam walked onto the small stage and tapped his glass. I know everyone expects the best man to give a speech. He looked at me, but before Ethan does, I need to say something. The room became quiet. I spent 12 years believing my brother betrayed me. He smiled sadly. I was wrong. I let someone else's fear become my truth. He looked directly at me. I'm sorry. Every guest watched us. Some already crying. I lost 12 years with my best friend. He laughed softly. I'm not losing another day. The room erupted in applause. Not loud, warm, sincere. I walked onto the stage, looked at Liam, then at Emma, then at our parents. I spent years imagining this wedding. I imagined standing outside, wondering what it looked like inside. I imagined pretending I didn't care. I imagined driving away before anyone saw me. I smiled. I'm glad none of those things happened. A few people laughed. I used to believe family meant never making mistakes. I was wrong. Family means having the courage to admit when you already have. I looked at Liam. You weren't the little brother I lost. You were the little brother someone convinced me I'd already lost. He wiped away a tear. Then I looked toward Dad. The room followed my eyes. He looked nervous, almost frightened. I've thought a lot about what I'd say to my father if I ever got this chance. I imagined angry speeches. I imagined walking away. I imagined never speaking to him again. I paused. But life gave me something better. The room was silent. It gave me the chance to become a different man than the one who hurt me. Dad began crying again. Not quietly this time. He didn't try to hide it. I walked off the stage, crossed the room, stopped in front of him. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then I held out my hand. Not because everything was fixed. Not because the past disappeared. Because healing has to start somewhere. Dad looked at my hand, then slowly stood. Instead of shaking it, he hugged me, very carefully, like he was afraid I'd disappear. He whispered into my shoulder. I'm sorry I missed so much of your life. I answered honestly. So am I. Neither of us said, I forgive you. Some words take longer. Some moments shouldn't be rushed. But when we stepped apart, something had changed. Not the past. The future. 6 months later, the farmhouse looked completely different. The broken fence was gone. Fresh paint covered the walls. The old barn had been rebuilt. Children's laughter echoed across the fields. Exactly as Grandpa had hoped. Not because we kept the property, because we transformed it. The sign near the entrance read, The Robert Harrison Family Center, a place for families to begin again. Children who had nowhere to go spent weekends there. Single parents received free meals. Teenagers learned practical skills from volunteers. Retired mechanics taught young people how to repair cars. Teachers helped with homework. Local farmers donated fresh food. It wasn't just a building anymore. It became what Grandpa always wanted, a second chance. One autumn afternoon, I found Dad repairing a wooden bench outside the center. He smiled when he saw me. I still don't know how to build these straight. I laughed. You never could. For a while, we worked in silence. Comfortable silence. Very different from the silence we'd lived with for 12 years. As the sun began to set, I noticed something. 2 little boys were running across the field. One tripped. The other immediately turned around, helped him up, and kept running beside him. I smiled. Dad noticed them too. They remind me of you and Liam. I nodded. They remind me of who we used to be. He looked down. And who you became anyway. That evening, before locking up, I walked into Grandpa's old study. Most of the furniture was still there. So was the rocking chair. And on the wall hung a single framed photograph. It was the last picture ever taken of Grandpa. standing between Liam and me, one arm around each grandson, all three of us laughing. Below the frame, we placed one sentence from his final letter. Families don't break because of truth. They break because truth is delayed. I stood there for a long time, thinking about everything we'd lost, and everything we'd managed to rebuild. People often ask me if I ever forgave my father. The truth is, forgiveness isn't a single moment. It isn't one conversation or one hug. It's a choice you make again and again and again. Some days it's easy. Some days it's incredibly hard. But every time I walk through the doors of that family center and hear children laughing where silence once lived, I remember what Grandpa was trying to teach us all along. The greatest inheritance a family can leave behind isn't land. It isn't money. It isn't a house. It's giving the next generation a reason not to repeat your mistakes. And if you can do that, then even the most broken family can become someone else's hope.